The old town of Willow Creek had a melancholic air, with its streets covered in dry leaves and houses that seemed to whisper stories from the past. Alex gazed out the window of the car as his mother slowly drove through the narrow streets, each turn revealing a new fragment of a place he had to learn to call home. The death of his father was still a weight he carried, and moving to this town felt more like a punishment than a new beginning. As they parked in front of the house, an old building with foggy windows and a creaking porch, Alex felt a knot form in his stomach. The smell of fresh paint couldn't hide the aroma of nostalgia that lingered in the air. He knew his mother was doing her best, but her sadness mirrored his own, and they were both trapped in a cycle of melancholy. "Come on, sweetheart," his mother said, trying to smile. "Let's explore a bit." Alex hesitated but got out of the car. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the house's facade. He watched as his mother began unloading boxes, hoping his mind would be distracted, even if just for a moment. But the truth was, he felt completely alone, even next to her. That night, as he tried to sleep in a room that wasn't his, Alex turned and looked out the window. The darkness of the nearby forest seemed inviting, almost as if it were calling him. The mix of curiosity and loneliness was irresistible, and so he decided that the next day he would explore that unknown place, hoping to find something that could ease his pain. The next morning, Alex woke up to light filtering through the curtains. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, but he wasn't interested in coffee. The only thing on his mind was the majestic forest rising behind the house. With an almost instinctive impulse, he decided he would explore that unfamiliar territory, even if it meant leaving his mother alone for a few hours. After breakfast, he quickly said goodbye, promising he wouldn't wander too far. The forest awaited him, and curiosity transformed into determination. Alex crossed the yard and stepped onto the trail that wound through the trees. The sounds of birds and the rustling leaves enveloped him, almost like a song guiding him. As he walked, the sensation of being in a magical place took hold of him. He lost himself in thoughts, trying to imagine what life in the town would be like if he could finally make friends and leave behind the sadness that accompanied him. But as he distanced himself from the house, a feeling of unease began to creep in. After a few minutes of walking, Alex stumbled upon an old, dilapidated building hidden among the trees. It was an abandoned house with broken windows and a roof covered in moss. The air around it felt denser, as if the house itself were trapped in a distant time. A chill ran down his spine, but curiosity urged him closer. With a hesitant push, Alex opened the creaky door and stepped inside. The interior was shrouded in shadows, and the smell of mildew was strong. It was then that his eyes landed on an object that seemed to shimmer in the filtered light, a dusty diary hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Alex crouched down, his heart racing as he reached for the diary. The cover was worn, but the title, though faded, was still legible. Diary of a Dreamer. Carefully, he opened it, releasing a cloud of dust that floated through the air. The pages were yellowed but intact, and the handwriting was elegant and flowing. He began to read the first entries and soon found himself completely absorbed. The words spoke about the everyday life of someone who seemed to live in a world very much like his own. The author described their fears, insecurities, and the struggle to find a place in a world that often felt hostile. Alex felt a strange connection with that unknown person, as if their experiences intertwined. As he turned the pages, the stories became more intimate and emotional. The author mentioned a special place in the forest where they used to go to escape their problems. Alex found himself thinking about how he, too, longed for a refuge, a place where he could leave his worries behind. But as he progressed in his reading, a subtle shift began to occur. The entries started to grow darker, reflecting a deepening despair. The author spoke of strange visions, a feeling of being watched, and finally a prediction of a tragic event that would change their life forever. The last passages were cohesive yet filled with fear and anguish. Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. With each new line, his unease grew. How could someone predict their own destiny? He closed the diary, his heart pounding in his chest. The atmosphere in the house seemed to have changed, as if the walls were witnesses to what he had just read. He stood up, determined to leave that house. But one question lingered in his mind. Who was the author of the diary? And what really happened to them? The idea of uncovering the truth consumed him, but it also terrified him. He knew that somehow the story of the diary was intertwining with his own, and he needed to understand how far it would take him. The walk back home was marked by a whirlwind of thoughts. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the diary was somehow connected to him. The author's words echoed in his mind, and the predictions of a tragic fate left him restless. He felt as if a shadow was forming behind him, whispering secrets he wasn't ready to hear. When he arrived home, his mother was busy organizing the boxes, and he chose not to mention the diary. The weight of the responsibility not to worry her further pressed on his shoulders. But with each passing moment, his anxiety grew. He locked himself in his room, rereading the pages of the diary, trying to find clues that would help him avoid the fate the author had faced. The author's visions of being watched began to manifest in Alex's mind. He often looked out the window, waiting to see something or someone that would confirm his suspicions. At night, the whispers from the forest grew louder, and he began to feel he was not alone. The line between reality and fiction grew thinner. One day, while walking to school, Alex encountered a group of students who ignored him. The loneliness washed over him again, echoing his sorrow. He recalled the pages that spoke of the author's desire to connect with others. But how could he do that when he felt his life was trapped in a cycle of pain? That night, he decided he could not continue like this. He needed answers. With the diary in hand, he made a silent promise. He would uncover what had happened to the author and, if possible, prevent his own life from following the same dark path. However, with each passing day, the feeling of being watched intensified. He began to notice shadows moving around him, and the whispers from the forest grew louder. Alex wondered if he was losing his mind or if something truly supernatural was entwined with his new life. A deep, uncontrollable fear began to settle in his heart, and he knew he needed to act before it was too late. Days dragged on, and Alex felt increasingly trapped in a web of uncertainties. The diary had become an extension of his life, its pages filled with fears and yearnings he could barely express. He tried to share his concerns with his mother, but his attempts were frustrating. She was so absorbed in dealing with her own grief that she couldn't see the internal struggle her son was facing. "It's just a story, Alex. Don't let it get to you," she said with a worried look as she tried to reassure him. But he knew it was more than that. There was something deeper and more disturbing. The diary was not just a collection of written words. It was a warning. Loneliness enveloped him like a heavy cloak, and the pressure to fit in at the new school felt unbearable. Alex watched as other students laughed and enjoyed themselves, feeling like a spectator in his own life. He wanted to connect, but the fear of rejection paralyzed him. The thought that his fate could mirror that of the diary's author made him even more anxious. At night, as he tried to sleep, the whispers from the forest grew louder. He tossed and turned in bed, restless. The sense that something was about to happen kept him on high alert. He decided that if he wanted to change his fate, he needed to confront his fears. The next morning, Alex woke with renewed determination. He could no longer live in the shadow of the diary and its predictions. It was time to seek answers. But the thought of returning to the abandoned house terrified him. The battle between curiosity and fear was becoming increasingly intense. He knew he had to face this internal struggle, for it was the only way to find the freedom he so desperately sought. Alex could no longer ignore the feeling that the diary held secrets that could change his life. The desire to understand the author and the connection he felt with them became overwhelming. That afternoon, after school, he decided he needed to return to the abandoned house in search of answers. Armed with a flashlight and renewed determination, he traversed the forest once more. Each step felt heavier than the last, and the air around him seemed charged with anticipation. When he finally arrived at the house, the door creaked open, as if inviting him in. He hesitated for a moment, but curiosity pushed him inside. The interior was just as dark as before, but Alex felt more confident this time. He made his way to the spot where he'd found the diary and began looking for any other objects that might offer clues. As he rummaged through things, he found some loose notes that had fallen from a shelf. The words were confusing, but they felt familiar. With a racing heart, he read aloud, "The forest holds secrets that must be revealed. Do not fear what you will find." Those words seemed to pulse with life, and Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. The author understood that the forest played a crucial role in his story. As he examined further, Alex began to hear soft whispers, as if the house itself were trying to communicate with him. He followed the sounds, which seemed to be coming from a room at the back. Upon entering, he found a dusty room, but something caught his eye, an old rocking chair gently swaying as if someone had just been sitting in it. Fear and curiosity mingled as he approached. In the chair, he found a familiar object, a small box. When he opened it, Alex discovered old photographs of the diary's author, smiling in moments that seemed joyful. But alongside the photos was a letter with an implicit warning. "Beware of the echoes of the past. They can bind you." The words reverberated in his mind, and Alex realized he was getting closer to something deeper than he had expected. The author's past was tied to his own, and he needed to uncover the truth before it was too late. The atmosphere in the house became oppressive, as if the walls were breathing in unison with Alex's fears. He held the letter and the photographs, feeling he was about to cross a line that could not be undone. The whisper he had heard before seemed to grow louder, as if begging for his attention. With the box in hand, he decided he needed to focus. Alex recalled the pages of the diary that spoke of visions and shadows, and the idea terrified him, but he could no longer run. He had committed himself to uncovering the truth, and now he was on a path with no turning back. As he prepared to leave the house, a sudden loud bang echoed, causing the windows to rattle. Alex turned, his heart racing. The door he had left ajar slammed shut, and the shadows in the room seemed to move. He was trapped. "Who's there?" Alex shouted, his voice trembling. The immediate silence was deafening, and he felt a wave of panic wash over him. The flashlight began to flicker, casting dancing shadows against the walls. It was then that the manifestation occurred. A nebulous figure emerged from the shadows, a pale silhouette that seemed to twist and form. Alex stood frozen, fear consuming him. The indistinct spirit gazed at him with sad, desperate eyes. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered, the voice echoing like a distant memory. I just want to understand," Alex replied, trying to control his fear. "What happened to you? Why did you write the diary?" The figure hesitated, as if battling between revealing itself or fading away. "I couldn't escape," the voice said, now clearer. "The echoes of the past have bound me, and I am a warning for you. Don't follow the same path." Alex felt a surge of compassion. He didn't want that spirit to feel trapped, just as he felt. "What can I do?" he asked, his words filled with sincerity. "Destroy the diary. Burn it before it consumes you too," implored the spirit. "Free yourself from the shadow it brings." The spirit's words resonated in Alex's mind, and he realized he was at a crossroads. He could follow the advice and free himself, or ignore it and risk his own fate. The internal struggle intensified, and he knew that the decision he made would change everything. The spirit vanished in a cloud of shadows, but its words echoed in Alex's mind. He was alone in the abandoned house, surrounded by his doubts and fears. The diary, now heavy in his hands, seemed to pulse with energy that both attracted and terrified him. The connection he felt with the author and the spirit became increasingly intense. Alex sat on the cold floor, the diary open in front of him. With a small lighter he had found at home, he lit a piece of paper and brought it close to the cover of the diary. The flames quickly spread, and Alex watched, fascinated and terrified, as the fire consumed the pages and the words that had haunted his mind. As the diary began to burn, a wave of relief washed over him. It was as if an enormous weight was being lifted from his shoulders. He felt freedom starting to enter his heart, and the shadow that had been following him began to dissipate. The flames danced, illuminating his face as he watched the ashes rise, floating away as if carrying his fears with them. With the diary burned, Alex stood up, an involuntary smile forming on his face. He finally felt free. The spirit of the author was no longer trapped, and somehow Alex knew he had made the right choice. Now it was time to look to the future. As he walked back home, a new determination pulsed within him. He was ready to face life in the new town, willing to make friends and open himself up to new experiences. The past would not define him, and he had learned the importance of living fully in the present. With dawn breaking, the gentle sunlight filtered through the trees, warming Alex's face as he walked back home. The weight that had once oppressed him had vanished, and he felt lighter, as if the very air around him was filled with possibilities. Burning the diary had not only destroyed an object, but also freed his mind from the chains that bound him. Upon entering the house, he found his mother in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. She looked up at him with a genuine smile, and Alex felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over him. "You seem different," she remarked. "Happier. What happened?" He hesitated for a moment, but the truth was in his heart. "I learned to leave the past behind," he replied. "And now I'm ready for the future." As the day unfolded before him, Alex sat at the table and began to talk to his mother about his new school, his hopes and dreams. He was determined to make new friends and create new memories, free from the weight of the sadness that had once followed him. Life in Willow Creek was beginning to reveal itself as a new adventure, and Alex smiled at the future, knowing he now had the strength to shape it. With each word exchanged with his mother, he felt the connection between them grow stronger, bringing warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. In the days that followed, Alex began to explore the town and interact with his classmates at school. He joined a reading club where he found others who shared his passion for stories. Gradually, he made friends with a group that welcomed him, and the loneliness that had haunted him began to fade. One afternoon, while walking through the forest, he recalled the diary and the spirit he had encountered. Alex reflected on how the experiences that had marked him had shaped him but did not define him. He had learned the importance of confronting his fears and seeking the truth, not just about others but about himself. Sitting on a fallen log, Alex looked up at the treetops and felt a wave of gratitude. He knew that life would still bring challenges, but he was ready to face them head-on. With a smile on his face, he stood up, feeling stronger than ever. The story of the diary had come to an end, but his own was just beginning. The future was a blank book, and Alex was determined to fill it with his own adventures and memories. He finally understood that regardless of the past, there would always be opportunities for a fresh start.